Greetings, birdlings! It's time for Out There with the Birds, the podcast that's been called ear candy for birders, with your hosts Ben Lizdas and Bill Thompson. Out There with the Birds is supported by Kowa Sport Optics, makers of the legendary 883 Promenade spotting scope. Visit sportingoptics.kowa-usa.com to learn more. And by Holbrook Travel. Holbrook Travel's mission is to facilitate a true connection between travelers and destinations. Since 1974, they've taken thousands of travelers on expeditions across Latin America, Africa, and destinations beyond. Learn more at holbrooktravel.com. And additional support comes from the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Come birding with us in our favorite places. Learn more at birdwatchersdigest.com/RR. And now here they are, Bill and Ben.
Hey Ben, welcome man.
Hey,
it's
Bill.
number 10, double figures.
Episode number 10, double figures. We've gotten this far and got a good head of steam on a good tailwind on us here. We're gonna just ride this out. I'm thinking we have at least 200 episodes in this podcast. We're gonna run longer than the Simpsons. We are gonna be the Simpsons of birding podcasts, I think.
Oh my gosh, those are big cartoonish feet to fill.
Big, giant, Krusty the Clown sized feet to fill, huh? Nice. I was hoping you'd do that.
All right. Well, listen. I know you've got to go. You've got errands to run. It's a Friday, and you got to rock it.
We are on the eve of a big trip that we're taking, aren't we? So the next podcast we record, number 11, most likely you and I will record in person in Portugal. And we're heading out tomorrow on that 2-week birding jaunt. I've never been birding in Portugal before. You've been there before. So episode 11 should, I'm guessing, have some great content about the people, the birds, the food, the culture of Portugal, bustards, the other European species. So that's something to look forward to. But in the meantime, I've got my eye on the prize of just getting out the door on time and not forgetting anything. And when I got my mail yesterday, I got my latest issue of Birdwatchers Digest, and in there was an article by Pete Dunn from Cape May Bird Observatory, well-known author, wrote a great article all about traveling with optics, which I thought, this is perfect, and was reading that, and he really had some good points. So I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of quick review of what I gained from Pete's knowledge, a well-traveled birder, much like yourself, and I, the guy, has been so many places, so a veteran traveling birder. And one of his big tips was always carry on your optics with you. A couple good reasons. One, of course, there's the issue of potential theft. If you've got high-end stuff, that's you really don't want to be stuck without your binoculars there. But also, you could lose your luggage, which has happened. Checked luggage, you could lose that. Also, this was something that was interesting. The luggage compartments on airplanes are not pressurized. And you run the risk in a situation like that of potentially blowing out some of the seals in your optics if it's in a non-pressurized environment. So when you get to your destination, if you're going to the tropics or something in particular, your waterproofing's all gone. So, carry on your optics. The other thing he recommends is to pack your tripod. You don't need to carry that on. Stick that in your suitcase. I always take my tripod apart when I pack it because I can fit it down a little bit smaller. I remove the center column from the tripod and pack the head separately. Another thing that I always do that Pete did not mention in his article that I would recommend for birders traveling with their gear, though, is I always check my tripod to be sure all the parts are working well. Everything's all the nuts.
Everything's tight.
Everything's tight, and to be sure that there's nothing that's loose that could rattle off or fall apart, because if you're going to carry that gear all the way with you, in our case, we're going to be going across the Atlantic. We want to be sure that when you get there, you've got a functioning tripod. Another thing that Pete did mention that's tripod related that I have come across before is getting to my final destination. I've got my tripod, I've got my scope. I don't have a quick release plate to mate the two of them together, making my tripod pretty much useless. So I travel with 2 or 3 flavors of quick release plates now so that I've got extras for myself and also potentially for any of my birding companions.
I always travel with extra ones too because I too have been caught in some beautiful far-flung birdie place with my scope in one hand and my tripod in the other, and tears streaming down my face. One time, one time, I actually used zip ties, duct tape, and chopsticks to put my scope on my tripod, and it worked for the several days that I was there. But man, I wouldn't recommend it. So, an interesting point, talking about traveling with optics. Sometimes I've had it happen where you're taking a little puddle jumper flight within a country, and your carry-on is too heavy because it's got your scope, your binocs, maybe your camera, maybe a couple of eyepieces or something like, or other camera lenses. And this is a trick that I've seen a couple of veteran traveling photographer birder friends of mine do. And it's worked for me one time when I was traveling in Guyana, where the puddle jumpers are tiny little, like 6-seat planes. It's you, the pilot, and 3 or 4 other people. And literally they ask you, please go to the bathroom before you get on the plane because we're trying to lighten the, and they weigh your luggage, and they're very strict about it. And or sometimes even on bigger, cargo-like planes, they won't allow you to put in the hold that much weight in one thing. So that's why I always carry a birding vest, and you can put your cameras and your binoculars around your neck and stuff in your pockets. And for some reason, that's okay. Like, they don't care as long as it's not that much weight in one place in a bag in the cargo hold. So that's one reason to always, if you're traveling and you're planning to take, intra-country flights, and there are weight restrictions in kilograms, sometimes you can take that stuff off and put it in your pockets, and they don't mind. Now, from a logic standpoint, what if you hit turbulence and there are lenses bouncing around the cabin, knocking people out? That's a different safety thing, but that's a tip that a photographer friend of mine did for traveling down in the tropics, and that really helps.
Yeah. Another thing that that Pete mentioned, which is something I always practice, is to bring a backup pair of binoculars.
Oh yeah.
Because the last thing you want to do is get to your final destination or be a couple days into a 2-week birding tour somewhere where you can't just call up your local optics retailer and get a replacement, find out that your binoculars are out of alignment, or you have to look through one barrel the entire time.
Right.
And the odds of that happening are slim, but when it does, you're going to be glad you've got an extra pair of binoculars. And if it doesn't happen to you, it could happen to someone else on your tour, and then you can be the savior of the day, being like, hey, I've got this backup pair of binoculars. So
right.
I always like to travel with 2 pair of binoculars. And then lastly, what Pete didn't mention in this article, but maybe it's just common sense knowledge, I always travel with a cleaning kit.
Yep. And if you're going to someplace tropical and humid, maybe the cleaning kit should also include some anti-fog liquid. That stuff, it works great. The old trick of staying in a tropical lodge somewhere, and your room is air conditioned, and you get out in the morning, it's your first morning, and there are the birds, and you put your binoculars up your eyes, and they've been in your cool room all night. Take them out in the humid air, and you can't see anything. It's like looking, into a piece of gray flannel. And so the anti-fog stuff can save you from that. A better pro tip, if you don't want to use extra chemicals on your lenses, is to just keep your optics in the bathroom of your cabin or your lodge room or whatever, or just keep it in the closet, in a room that's not air conditioned.
Exactly. Likewise, sometimes when you're on those tour buses where the air conditioning is cranking, there's these upper compartments you can stick your binoculars in while you're traveling, and I find that they're just like little refrigerators almost. The optics just get so cold up there, and then you get to your destination, you go reach above the little shelf space above your seat, grab your binoculars out, and you get outside, and they just totally fog up. So anything you can do to keep your optics at the ambient temperature and relative humidity of the environment, you're going to be a step ahead of the game.
Yep. I've even on super cold long bus trips, I've even taken my binocs and wrapped them up in a jacket and put them underneath my the seat next to me to underneath my backpack on the seat next to me to keep them from chilling down really.
Exactly. So I think that that's my portion of the practical tips and advice for this episode of Out There with the Birds.
I think we can probably in the future, I'd love to do some some travel tips for traveling birders. Like, we can devote a whole episode to that if we want.
There's lots to be said about that.
Yeah.
As birders who travel, we probably have slightly different needs and necessities from the general traveling public, and there's always little things that folks like you and I spend a lot of time on the road can help out here.
One thing I'm going to do on our flight tomorrow evening when we're flying in the dark over the Pacific. I mean, I've got to edit some podcasts. That's number one. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have the Birds of Europe field guide with me, and I'm going to leaf through and try and refamiliarize myself with some of the, trying to tell some of the larks apart and some of the, those colorful European warblers.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey now. You call them warblers, we call them vireos.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, one of the things I was flipping through the channels on the TV, and I saw the classic movie with featuring Jimmy Stewart, starring Jimmy Stewart, The Flight of the Phoenix. And I happened to see it right at the part. It's also got this great character actor, British guy with kind of a flattened nose that plays sort of the villain who wants to eat all the food and drink all the water. So the concept is Jimmy Stewart and these guys, it's sometime during World War II or just after, and they crash a cargo plane in the African desert. And they're crashed there with no rescue, and they're trying to figure out a way out. And during the nighttime scenes, several times in the movie, a common loon is heard yodeling in the background.
Wow.
And it made me think some director on the set, was going, give me a nighttime bird sound. And instead of owls, they picked loons because, okay, that one's good. Let's leave that in. And it made me think about some of the times, and, people can Google, lots of articles have been written about this, both from the birding perspective and from the sort of movie making perspective. But, as birders, we get accused of being nerdy because, we're never not birding, right? And yeah. I mean, back in, I think it was in the 2002 or 2005, the Masters, which just happened down in Augusta, Georgia. Augusta National Golf Course, the CBS was showing the Masters, and some producer somewhere said, this is so beautiful with all the azaleas and, all the beautiful trees and wildflowers and stuff. Where are the damn birds? So one of the things they did was they put microphones down and put like bowls of birdseed down, thinking, oh, we'll get happy birds here eating and cheeping and singing. Well, that didn't work. What they probably got is a bunch of house sparrows and starlings and raccoons, right? Yeah. So they decided, I know what we'll do. We'll just pipe some bird sounds in. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was created kind of a furor because there are lots of golfers who are birders and lots of birders who golf. And so, naturally, people who are birders are watching the Masters, and here's, I don't know who, Tiger Woods or, Phil Mickelson getting ready to chip onto the green, and they're hearing like veeries singing in the background, and somebody played a California quail, and a canyon wren. I mean, it was nuts. And I remember a bunch of people were all over blogs at the time saying, what the heck, this is fake. And of course, CBS eventually came clean and admitted it. But they did that for, they did it for several different golf tournaments. But it reminded me of how many times that's happened to me. Like Game of Thrones, right? I watched Game of Thrones basically every episode I could. And there were frequent, bird things, especially when they were in the Kingdom of Dorne, the sunny, sandy Kingdom of Dorne. Mm-hmm. They would play I think there were verdins and bush tits and it's just funny. We need some bird sounds. And I know at one point there was an eastern screech owl in there somewhere, and I'm thinking, wow, man. So somewhere there's probably a bird checklist to the birds of Game of Thrones. And of course, all of this is superseded by the constant use of red-tailed hawk screams for every flying large bird.
Yeah, exactly. Condor to peregrine falcon to American eagle,
turkey vulture. I was interviewing Katie Fallon today for my This Birding Life podcast. She drove over from Morgantown, West Virginia, and we had a nice interview about her new book, Vulture, and it's about her love of turkey vultures. And we were laughing about how many Clint Eastwood movies or westerns, or like,
Hmm.
somebody's dying of thirst in the desert, or they get shot and the vultures appear and they play. you know?
The red-tailed hawk call. Yeah.
So anyway, that's just a fun discussion to
Yeah.
have. So I would encourage listeners out there to email us with other examples of bad bird call matches
Egregious bird
in
calls
TVs and
in
movies, and they
Hollywood.
can send that stuff to editor@birdwatchersdigest.com, and I'll be happy to.
Someone should start a website. We should log
Yeah,
that.
cool.
So I was reading an interesting article recently. I go to this website called Science Daily quite often, which is just really kind of a clearinghouse for current scientific research being
Mm-hmm.
done, ranging from human behavior and evolution to biology, endangered species, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And was reading a story there about this was a study done by the University of Bath, and they have their Milner Center for Evolution, center spelled CENTRE,
Sure.
just like the
Mm-hmm.
Baths do that, the Brits there. And the study essentially highlighting that promiscuity slows down evolution of new species. That was the title of this study.
Okay.
So, and it was studying shorebirds and making a connection between polygamous shorebirds and lack of genetic diversity, I guess you would say, from an evolutionary perspective. The fact that these polygamous birds, the studies went to say they go far and wide to find mates. These are birds that tend to look for specific traits in mates. Maybe you're looking for a certain spotted sandpiper that does a great tail
Mm-hmm.
bob, and you're really particular about the mate you choose, and you key down these traits. You go far and wide to find the perfect spotted
Mm-hmm.
sandpiper, and this would be in species that would be polygamous, a typical behavioral trait. And it was thought originally that by going far and wide, by breeding for specific traits, you are actually kind of furthering the evolution or species divergence a little bit more. But this study says, hold on, wait a second. They have found that monogamous species of birds who tend to kind of look around, and instead of being really choosy about their mates, kind of look around them and say, hey, I could do fine with just about any of these guys
Mm-hmm.
or gals. And they tend to not go far and wide, and they keep their gene pool relatively, from a geographical perspective, localized. And this actually has a stronger influence of genetic diversity amongst the species, creating opportunities for evolutionary traits, because the genes are essentially sticking around in the same area, and you're creating pockets where you're going to have stronger diversity within that little pocket, as opposed to spreading your genes all over the place. So those species going, let's say you have a group of plovers in one part of Alaska compared to a group of plovers over in
Mm-hmm.
Russia, for instance. Those two, as they're isolated, if they might be these monogamous groups of the species of birds, but even though they're the same species, because they tend not to fly far and wide, they are going to have better chances of becoming genetically more
Okay.
distinct, which was interesting, I thought. And of course, I always think about this within the context of, what for the furthering of evolution. I always think, what's it mean for humans? How could this apply for humans? And so essentially, I think of it. So being in a monogamous relationship with someone who you find locally. Say I'm here in Wisconsin, I'm finding someone who is a Green Bay Packer fan, loves cheese and long cold winters.
Which would be
And
deal
if
breakers
we
for
stay
me.
breeding exactly. But by finding a mate like
Right.
that, where they're all around, perhaps we're doing our legwork to further human evolution, as opposed to, if I'm the kind of person that, instead of finding people right around me who I want to mate with, let's say I am looking for a mate that's over 6 feet tall, brunette, and likes wearing cowboy hats. I might range far and wide all over the country trying to find that mate. And as a result, though, I'm diluting the
Uh,
gene pool by going far and
okay.
wide. So this notion of localized genetic material having stronger evolutionary
Right.
pull than diluting your genes. I think it's pretty fascinating.
My eyes are glazing over, certainly. It is fascinating, though. I mean, we're finding out this stuff that, Katie blew my mind today when we were talking. She said, "Oh yeah, I was at this ornithological conference, a year or so ago, and somebody said, oh, guess what? It's not published yet, but we're finding that there's only one genetic marker that's different between blue-winged warblers and golden-winged warblers. So they're basically the same species. The only gene that's different for them is plumage. So golden wings have different plumage than blue wings." And I said, I can't believe that. I mean, I think we're learning stuff all the time about these things, and just the fact that conventional wisdom would say that mating with someone far away you would logically think that would make things more diverse. Our studies are telling us that's not the case.
Yeah.
A little bit of a mind blow there.
Exactly. By, I guess it's that relationship between maybe localized geographic events or attributes have more of an impact on evolutionary progress than specific traits like that you might find in a species, be it a certain the floppiness of the crest of the bird or their particular flight dance. But it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, interesting. The floppiness. I wonder if that works for the floppiness of the hat of the birder, or the unzippiness of the pants of the legs of the pants of the bird. All right. Speaking of zip-off pants, I hope you're packing your zip-off pants for Portugal.
I don't know.
Because we're going to be zipping those legs off in the sun. Man.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful over there. All right, one final thing. I want to leave people with this final thought and see how many people out there listening to this podcast remember the Folgers commercial where the couple are in their pith helmets and their khaki and they're loping through the deep forest. And one of them says to the other one, "There it is, honey," and points, "the red-winged blackbird." And they pull their giant binoculars down and they have these self-satisfied smiles. And then they say, "Let's go have some Folgers coffee." Do you remember that?
I've never seen that.
Oh,
no.
It was probably before your time, but I think it happened when I was in high school or something, or maybe college. So this would have been back in the 1880s. And oh my gosh, the even back then when birdwatching wasn't a solidified community, there was an uproar. How could you? Red-winged blackbirds don't occur in the woods. That was the answer from the bird watchers.
Oh gosh, when birders get involved in pop culture, things just can go sideways quickly.
I know. All right, man. Well, listen, we're hitting that 22-minute mark, almost 23. My brain is full. My suitcase is packed. We'll be leaving on a jet plane, I will see you in a matter of hours.
Yeah, that sounds right. In the meantime, until then, I suppose safe travels. I'll meet you in an airport somewhere shortly. Okay.
Yeah, man.
All right.
May the force be with you.
Next episode coming from Portugal, huh?
That's right, buddy. Take care. We'll see you soon. All right.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of Out There with the Birds. Special thanks to Koa, our optic sponsor. Learn more about their fine line of birding products at sportingoptics.coa-usa.com. And thanks to Holbrook Travel. Learn about the Holbrook Travel experience at holbrooktravel.com. We're also supported by the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Your next birding adventure starts at birdwatchersdigest.com/RR. Tune in next time for some more noise from the boys, Bill and Ben. Until then, keep your eyes to the skies and we'll see you out there with the birds. Adios!